I'm Alexandra, but everyone calls me Alex. I'm 38, a woman who has spent her adult life building a career, a reputation, and, as it turns out, a gilded cage for my own family. And now, they had just disowned me via text message, with the full expectation that I'd keep paying their bills. The irony was so sharp it felt like a physical blow, leaving me breathless in the sterile silence of my minimalist apartment. The text arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a week before Christmas. My phone buzzed on the granite countertop, an innocuous vibration signaling the demolition of my world. It was from my mother, Carol, but I knew the words were a joint statement, a decree from her and my father, David. It read, "We need space. Please don't reach out to us anymore. This family needs time to heal without your constant drama." Drama, that word was their shield and their sword. For 15 years, any attempt I made to be seen as a person rather than a provider was dismissed as drama. It was the label they slapped on my concerns, my feelings, my exhaustion. It was the word they used to shut me down, to remind me of my role, the quiet, efficient, and endlessly flowing fountain of cash that kept their comfortable lives afloat. My family consists of my parents, my younger sister Isabella, and me. To an outsider, we looked normal. My father was a retired history teacher, my mother a former part-time librarian, living in the respectable suburban home I grew up in. My sister, Bella, was the artist, the free spirit. At 32, she was a delicate butterfly perpetually on the verge of taking flight, if only the conditions were absolutely perfect. The problem was, the conditions were always perfect for them because I made them so. When my father retired early, his pension wasn't quite enough. When my mother decided she'd rather garden than work, I understood. I was in my mid-20s, just starting to earn real money as a tech consultant. I stepped in with a small monthly contribution for the mortgage. It felt like the right thing to do. But small became a moving target. The contribution grew incrementally, so slowly I barely noticed. It became the mortgage payment, then the car insurance, then the utilities. When Bella graduated with an art history degree and decided a 9-to-5 would crush her soul, I started covering her car payments and phone bill, too. It was all under the banner of family support. We were a team, they said, except I was the only one pulling. The drama they accused me of always coincided with my attempts to gently apply the brakes. 5 years ago, my parents decided to join the local country club, an absurdly expensive venture. When my mother called to tell me the news, her voice was giddy. "It will be so good for your father's health, Alex. The golfing, the swimming," she'd chirped. I took a deep breath. "Mom, that's great, but how are you planning to afford the membership fees?" The silence was immediate and cold. "Well, I assumed you'd want to help," she said, her tone shifting from cheerful to wounded. "Don't you want us to be happy and healthy in our old age?" My reasonable question was framed as an attack on their happiness. I was creating drama. I ended up setting up another automatic payment to the country club, the digital transfer a monthly reminder of my weakness. Another time, the drama revolved around Bella. She needed a dedicated art studio and had found the perfect loft space, with rent higher than my own mortgage. I was already funding her apartment, car, and food. I suggested she could start smaller, maybe convert the guest bedroom at our parents' house. The fallout was spectacular. Bella cried for 2 days, accusing me of not believing in her talent. My father called, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Alexandra, your sister is a sensitive soul. She needs encouragement, not criticism. I thought you, of all people, would understand the importance of fostering a dream." I was the villain again, the pragmatic, unfeeling sister crushing the delicate artist. They didn't see the 16-hour days I was pulling, the vacations I never took, the social life that had dwindled to nothing. They only saw that the flow of money had been questioned, and that was an unforgivable sin. That was drama. I paid the first and last month's rent on the loft. The dynamic was set in stone. I was the chief financial officer of a family corporation in which I had no voting rights. My parents had curated a life of leisure they hadn't earned. Bella was free to pursue her whims without the burden of financial reality. and I was the ghost in the machine. So when that text arrived, it wasn't a shock. It was the culmination of years of this toxic arrangement. The healing they needed was a break from the one person who occasionally reminded them that their lifestyle was a fantasy funded by my labor. They wanted the comfort, the security, but they didn't want me. I stood there starry. NG at the message. The words swam before my eyes: constant drama, need to heal, don't reach out. Each phrase was a sharpened icicle aimed at my heart, but something was different. The usual wave of guilt didn't come. In its place, a strange and terrible clarity began to dawn. It was the cold, hard, and utterly liberating clarity of a final straw. They had finally, explicitly, stated the terms of our relationship. I was a transaction, and a transaction can be canceled. My fingers were surprisingly steady as I typed a simple, clean reply, devoid of the emotion they so detested. "Of course," I wrote, "I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing Monday morning." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The little delivered notification appeared. There was no immediate reply, only silence. The calm before the storm I was about to unleash. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like the villain. I felt like a prisoner who had just found the key to her own cell. The weeks leading up to the fateful text had been a masterclass in my family's entitlement. Christmas was their favorite season, a pageant of prosperity where I was the unseen producer and financier. This year, my mother had decided our usual dinner wasn't grand enough. She'd found a venue, a historic inn with a private dining room called the Hearth Room, complete with a roaring fireplace and dedicated waitstaff. It was ridiculously opulent for 4 people, but the idea had taken root. "It will be a memory for us to cherish, Alex," she had explained a month prior, her voice oozing a practiced sweetness. A real, old-fashioned Christmas, just family together. Just family meant her, Dad, and Bella enjoying a fantasy. My presence was the price of admission they had to pay for the party. "It sounds lovely, Mom," ID said, already doing the math, "but it also sounds very expensive." "Oh, don't you worry about the little details," she'd waved away my concern. "Bella has been handling the arrangements. She has such a wonderful eye. She said they just need a deposit to hold the date." A classic maneuver. Involve Bella to make it harder for me to object. Questioning the expense would now be an attack on Bella's hard work. My sister sent me a link to the venue with a single-sentence email. "Deposit is $2,000. They need it by Friday. XOXO Bella." No please, no thank you. Just a demand. I transferred the money. To refuse would be to start a firestorm. It would be drama. The tension escalated a week later. I was on a conference call when my phone began buzzing incessantly. It was Bella. On the 5th call, fearing an emergency, I excused myself and answered. "Alex, I'm at the mall, and I found the perfect dress for the Christmas dinner," she gushed. "It's this gorgeous velvet green, but there's a problem. Mom's card was declined." I pinched the bridge of my nose. I had paid my mother's credit card bill in full less than 2 weeks ago. "Declined? Are you sure?" "Well, yeah, she and Dad did a little pre-Christmas shopping for themselves," Bella said casually. "Anyway, the dress is on hold, but only for an hour. Can you just call the store and pay for it? It's for the family dinner after all. We all have to look our best." We did not include me. I had already planned on wearing a simple black dress I'd owned for years. "Bella, I'm in the middle of a meeting," I said, my voice tight. "How much is the dress?" She hesitated. $750. $750 for a dress she would wear once. A dress for a dinner I was already paying thousands for. Something inside me, a small, weary part, finally stirred. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, unfamiliar and stark. "What do you mean, no?" Bella's voice was flat with disbelief. "I mean no, Bella. I'm not buying you a $750 dress. That's an outrageous amount of money. You all need to start thinking about a budget." This was the drama in its purest form. I had introduced the forbidden concept of financial accountability. "I can't believe you," she whispered, her voice thick with manufactured hurt. I'm just trying to make Christmas special, and you're being so cheap. It's not like you can't afford it. It's not about being mean, Bella. It's about being responsible. Fine, she snapped. I'll just tell Mom you said no. I hope you're happy, ruining everything. She hung up. I knew what would happen. Bella would report my transgression, painting me as a cruel monster. My reasonable boundary would be twisted into an act of aggression. The inevitable call from my father, the family's designated dispenser of disappointment, came that evening. He didn't yell. He used his quiet, sorrowful tone that made me feel like a failure. Alexandra, he began, your mother is very upset. Your sister is heartbroken. All they are trying to do is create a beautiful family memory, and you meet them with such hostility. Dad, it was a $750 dress, I argued, my voice sounding weak. They maxed out a credit card in less than 2 weeks, that's a fact. Money is not the point, Alex, he said, sighing. The point is generosity of spirit. The point is family. You seem to think that because you contribute, it gives you the right to dictate how we live. Your constant negativity is draining. It creates so much drama. There it was, the brand they had seared onto my identity. I wasn't their daughter, I was a source of negativity. My contribution wasn't a gift, it was a weapon they accused me of wielding. The conversation ended as it always did, with me feeling small and wrong. I didn't apologize, not this time. I just said, I have to go, Dad, and ended the call. That was the Saturday before the Tuesday text. The silence that followed was heavy and ominous. I knew they were conferring, reinforcing their narrative of my cruelty. This time, however, the anger I felt wasn't dissolving into guilt. It was hardening into resolve. When the text finally came, it felt less like a surprise and more like an official verdict. They had found me guilty of creating drama. The sentence was exile, but as I read the words, I realized they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had banished the person, but forgotten they were shackled to the person's bank account. It was a mistake I was more than happy to correct. The phone felt unnaturally heavy. We need space to heal without your constant drama. My first reaction was a hollow ache. The years of conditioning kicked in, the guilt whispering at the edges of my mind. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I am too negative. Maybe I should have just bought the dress. I sank onto the sleek sofa in my living room, a piece chosen for its professional look, not comfort. My entire apartment was a stage set for a life I was too busy funding to actually live. The pristine walls, the abstract art I disliked, the windows overlooking a city I never explored. It was all just a beautiful, empty box my sacrifice had bought. The pain in my chest slowly morphed, sharpening into a hot point of pure, icy rage. The anger of 1,000 slights, a million casual assumptions, and a decade of thankless servitude. They needed to heal? Heal from what? From the stress of having every bill paid on time, from the trauma of a fully stocked refrigerator. Heal from the person who sacrificed her own youth so they could live in a consequence-free wonderland. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. They had used me, bled me dry, and now cast me aside like garbage, all while positioning themselves as the victims. And that's when I knew I was done. It wasn't a dramatic epiphany, but a quiet, profound shift deep within my soul. The part of me that had always craved their approval simply died, leaving behind something hard and unbreakable. I thought about the word space. It was the one thing they had asked for that I could give them in abundance. I picked up my phone again. I didn't plead or ask for an explanation. I gave them exactly what their words implied. A business transaction was being terminated. Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing Monday morning. I hit send. The finality was terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time, I wasn't playing their game. I had flipped the whole board over. An adrenaline of liberation coursed through me. Canceling the deposits was the first step, but there was an emotional severance that needed to happen too. My mind flashed to my parents' garage, a place where forgotten things went to die. Tucked away in a corner were several sagging cardboard boxes. Our entire family history. photo albums my mother had meticulously assembled, shoeboxes of loose snapshots, dozens of VHS and high-8 tapes with the only recordings of my first steps, of Bella's toddler squeals, of Christmases past when our family felt real. And at the bottom, wrapped in a faded dish towel, was my grandmother's recipe book, its pages soft and stained with vanilla and butter. My family hadn't looked at these things in years. I had been telling my mother for years that I wanted to have them professionally digitized to preserve our memories. "Oh, that's a nice idea, honey," she would say, her attention already drifting. "We'll get around to it." They never did. Now I realized those memories were in danger, not from time or decay, but from sheer neglect. Or worse, in a fit of pique, they might throw them out just to spite me. Those weren't just their memories. They were mine, too. I wasn't stealing them. I was rescuing them. I grabbed my car keys, my purse, and a stack of empty plastic bins. The drive to my parents' house, a journey I usually made with weary obligation, now felt like a grim mission. It was nearly 8 p.m. I knew they had a weekly bridge game at the country club I paid for. The house would be empty. I parked a block away and used the spare key they insisted I keep for emergencies. The house was quiet. I went straight to the garage, working quick. I transferred the contents of the old boxes into my sturdy bins. I handled each album, each tape, each photograph with a reverence my family had long since abandoned. When I lifted my grandmother's recipe book, its familiar weight felt like a sacred artifact. I loaded the bins into my car. As I drove away, I didn't look back. They wanted space. I had just removed the last pieces of our shared soul from their home. The financial cut would be a shock, but the discovery of this loss, I suspected, would be the blow that truly landed. The rest of the week passed in a surreal calm. At work, I was a model of efficiency. In the evenings, I methodically dismantled the financial scaffolding that held up my family's existence. Wednesday night, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and logged into my online banking. The screen glowed with a list of my scheduled payments, a digital ledger of my servitude. I started at the top. Recipient David and Carol last name. Amount $3,500, monthly, mortgage and taxes, click. Are you sure? Confirm, gone. Recipient Oak Ridge Country Club. Amount $850, monthly, cancel, confirm, gone. Recipient Capital Auto Finance. Amount $480, monthly, mom's SUV, cancel, confirm, gone. Recipient City Utilities. Varies monthly, cancel, confirm, gone. Visa Platinum. Amex Gold, full balance, monthly, cancel, confirm, gone. Then I got to Bella's section. Recipient Isabella last name. Amount $1,500, monthly, her artistic stipend. Cancel, confirm, gone. Recipient Loft Property Management. Amount $2,200, monthly, her precious studio. Cancel, confirm, gone. The family phone plan was last. I didn't cancel it. Instead, I initiated a transfer of liability. I would keep my own number and release the other 3 lines. They were free to start their own plan with their own credit. The final payment on the list was for the hearthroom. My initial $2,000 deposit was non-refundable, a small price to pay for freedom. I canceled the final $4,000 payment. Confirm, gone. When I was finished, the page of scheduled payments was nearly empty, save for my own bills. It looked so clean. It looked like my life. I closed the laptop. The knot of anxiety that had lived in my stomach for 15 years was gone. The silence was profound. The first tremor arrived at 3:17 a.m. on Friday. A notification from my bank. Payment declined. A scheduled payment of $4,000 to the Hearthroom Inn could not be processed due to cancellation. I smiled in the darkness. The venue must have tried to process the payment early. The perfect Christmas dinner had just evaporated. I fell into the most peaceful sleep I'd had in years. I woke around 8 a.m. to my phone vibrating violently. 21 missed calls from Bella. As I stared at the screen, a new call came through. I let it go to voicemail. A string of texts poured in. Alex, call me right now. The inn just called Mom. They said the dinner is canceled. What did you do? Mom is crying. You have to fix this. You are ruining Christmas. I hate you. The messages were a predictable cocktail of panic and melodrama. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was just angry that the party was over. I felt nothing. It was like watching a storm from behind thick glass. I waited for a lull, then composed a single reply. Wishing you all the distance you asked for. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, silencing the inevitable onslaught. This was just the beginning. This was about a canceled dinner party. They hadn't even checked their bank accounts yet, and they certainly hadn't gone into the garage. My silence acted like a lit match in a fireworks factory. My family, accustomed to my immediate capitulation, had no framework for this new reality. The digital assault intensified, branching out to my parents. First, the voicemails. Bella's were tearful and hysterical. Alex, how could you do this to us? This is all because of that stupid dress, isn't it? You've made your point, now just fix it. My mother's voice was shaky with fury masked as victimhood. Alexandra, I don't know what kind of cruel game you're playing. To cancel our Christmas celebration out of spite is the most childish, selfish thing you have ever done. We are deeply, deeply hurt. My father sent a single, frigid text. Your behavior is appalling. We are finished. Finished? As if there was anything left to finish. I saved the voicemails and screenshotted the texts, filing them in a folder labeled Receipts. The real pandemonium began Monday morning when the automated emails from the banks started rolling in. Payment due. Account overdrawn. A new wave of messages began around 10 a.m., the tone shifting from frantic to apocalyptic. From Bella, the landlord for my studio, called. The rent check bounced. Alex, what is going on? From my mother, the bank just called. Our mortgage payment was returned. I thought you were just being dramatic. You can't just do that. From my father, call me immediately. This has One far enough. They still didn't get it. They thought this was a negotiation tactic. The idea that this was permanent was beyond their comprehension. They had relied on me for so long that my support felt like a fundamental law of their universe, and the sun had just gone out. I maintained my silence. I went to work. I lived my life. The breaking point came on Christmas Eve. I received a call from an unknown number. It was my Aunt Carol, my father's sister. Hi, Aunt Carol, I said, my guard up. Honey, your dad called me. He's a wreck. They told me what's been going on. And what did they tell you? I asked calmly. They said you had a disagreement and that you've cut them off completely. They're losing the house, Alex. Bella is being evicted. Honey, this is your family. You can't just abandon them. I didn't abandon them, I replied truthfully. They asked me to leave. They told me not to contact them. I am simply respecting their wishes. There was a pause. Well, yes, but they didn't mean it like that, she stammered. They were just upset. About the Christmas dinner I was paying for, the one they felt entitled to while telling me they didn't want me around. Aunt Carol, this has been going on for 15 years. I am done. But Alex, what they're most upset about now, they said you came into their house. They said you took things. My blood ran cold, so they had noticed. They went to get out some old decorations, she continued, her voice a whisper. And they saw the empty space. All the photo albums, the old home movies, your grandmother's recipes, Alex, they're all gone. Your mother is inconsolable. She thinks you've destroyed them. Destroyed them. The accusation was so vile, so far from the truth, I couldn't even be angry. They neglected those memories for a decade, but the moment they were gone, they became priceless artifacts I had maliciously stolen. I didn't destroy them, I said, my voice hard as steel. I rescued them. They are safe. They are with me. Oh, thank goodness, she breathed. Well, you have to bring them back, honey. This has torn your mother apart. She said, it feels like you've erased her life. My life was in those boxes, too, I shot back. And I was the only one who cared enough to preserve it. They didn't even notice they were gone for a week. Does that sound like something they cherished? She didn't have an answer. Let them know the memories are safe, I said, my tone final, and let them know that this is the space they asked for. Goodbye, Aunt Carol. I hung up. The confrontation had finally happened. The money was a shock, a logistical nightmare. But the photos, the videos, the recipes, that was their legacy. It was the proof of the happy family they pretended to be. I had taken their narrative, and that was a wound far deeper than any bank statement could reveal. Christmas Day was the quietest I'd had in my adult life. I woke up late and sat with the plastic bins I had rescued. One by one, I opened them. The scent of old paper filled my apartment. I lifted out the first photo album. There I was, a gap-toothed 7-year-old next to a beaming 4-year-old Bella. My dad, younger and happier, teaching me to ride a bike. My mom and grandmother laughing in the kitchen. A wave of sadness washed over me, a clean grief for a family that used to be. For hours, I sat on the floor, surrounded by my past. I wasn't erasing their lives, I was bearing witness to them. My phone remained on Do Not Disturb. The calls and texts had stopped being about money and were now exclusively about the stolen heirlooms. From Bella, give us back our memories, you thief. From my father, those belong to this family. You have no right. From my mother, you have taken everything from me. I will never forgive you for this. Their pain was palpable, but so was their hypocrisy. They had never once acknowledged the text they sent me. In their minds, their initial cruelty had been erased, overwritten by my reaction to it. The day after Christmas, I took the most precious items, my grandmother's recipe book, the oldest albums and tapes, and placed them in a safe deposit box. The rest, I began the painstaking process of digitizing. I was doing what I had always said I would do, preserving our history. A few days later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject: an attempt at peace. It was from my father. My heart hammered. For a foolish second, I thought it might be an apology. I opened it. The letter was a long, rambling masterwork of self-pity. He wrote about his shock and hurt, my mother's devastation, their financial ruin, foreclosure notices, collection calls, Bella moving back home. Then came the pivot. And while your actions have been incomprehensibly cruel, he wrote, your mother and I, as your parents, are willing to find it in our hearts to forgive you. We are willing to move past this. All we ask is that you restore the financial support you know we rely on. And most importantly, return the family heirlooms. If you do this, we can begin the process of healing. We can be a family again. I read it 3 times. They were forgiving me. They were willing to move past my reaction to their cruelty as if it were the original sin. There was not one word of apology, not 1 ounce of accountability. It was the most clarifying document I had ever read. Any lingering doubt, any wisp of guilt, vanished in the face of such staggering arrogance. They hadn't learned a thing. The fallout wasn't just contained to them. My Aunt Carol called again. Alex, your father said he sent you an email extending an olive branch. He said you haven't responded. I read it, I said. It wasn't an olive branch, Aunt Carol. It was a demand letter disguised as a pardon. Does that sound reasonable to you? She was quiet. No, she admitted softly. No, it doesn't. The conversation solidified my resolve. I was no longer just reacting. I was building a new life. I spent New Year's Eve with friends from work. I started looking for a new apartment, one that felt like a home, not a showroom. The peace I felt was immense. It was the peace of a battle finally over. I had lost a family, but I had gained myself. 2 weeks into January, the frantic messages had dwindled to a sullen silence. According to my aunt, my parents were trying to sell the house, and Bella was apparently looking for a real job. I knew, however, that for there to be any true resolution for me, I needed to have the final word. Not of anger, but of truth. I sat down and wrote a formal letter, printed on high-quality paper. To David, Carol, and Isabella. I didn't use Mom, Dad, or Bella. This was a letter between 4 adults. I am writing this not to argue, but to state the facts of our situation, as they have been conspicuously absent from your communications. You have accused me of cruelty, theft, and ruining your lives. You have demanded I return to my former role, and in exchange, offered me your forgiveness. It is now my turn to speak. I laid it all out, calmly and methodically. I attached a printed spreadsheet listing every major expense I had covered for a decade: the mortgage, the country club, cars, credit cards, Bella's rent and stipend, the new roof, the emergency dental surgery. The final tally was staggering. On the other side, a column titled Incidents of Drama listed every time I had been berated or guilt-tripped for daring to question an expense. June 2018, questioned country club. Response, accused of wanting parents to be unhappy. March 2021, suggested affordable art studio. Response, accused of crushing Bella's spirit. December 2024, refused $750 dress. Response, accused of being mean and ruining Christmas. I continued, you have demanded the return of the family heirlooms. You are correct, they are your memories, they are also mine. For a decade, these items sat in a damp garage, neglected. I took them not to harm you, but to save them. The photos are being digitized. The videotapes are being converted. Grandma's recipe book is in a climate-controlled safe. I am not the destroyer of our family's history. I am its sole curator. Your text on December 19th was a statement of fact. You told me you needed space and that I should not contact you. You stated the family needed to heal from my constant drama. I have honored that request. The consequences you are now experiencing are a direct result of the terms you yourselves set. You cannot demand my absence and my money in the same breath. You wanted me out of your lives. This is what it looks like. Finally, I laid out my terms. The financial support will not be restored. That chapter is permanently closed. You are 3 able-bodied adults. It is time you assume responsibility for your own lives. As for the heirlooms, they represent a family. The family in those photographs does not resemble the one we have become. Therefore, the originals will remain in my care. Once the digitization is complete, I will provide all of you with a full digital copy, free of charge. You will have access to every memory. The physical items will be returned on one condition: that the 3 of you engage in meaningful, long-term family therapy with a licensed professional. If, and only if, a therapist can attest to a genuine breakthrough and a demonstrated commitment to change and accountability, I will personally deliver the originals to you. The choice is yours. You can continue to see me as the villain, or you can begin the difficult work of looking at yourselves. My own peace is no longer contingent on your decisions. I signed it simply, Alexandra. I made 3 copies and sent them via certified mail. There would be no claiming it got lost. Sending that letter was the final act of my liberation. I had taken back the narrative. I had laid out a path to a potential, healthier future, but placed the responsibility of walking that path onto them. I don't know if they will ever take that path. A part of me hopes they do, but I am no longer waiting. I have sold my sterile apartment and moved into a cozy place with a small garden. I am reconnecting with friends, traveling, and building a life that is truly my own, funded by my work, for my own happiness. My family wanted space to heal. I gave it to them. And in that space, I finally found the room to heal myself.